Hi everyone, and welcome to Series 2 of the Confidence Conversations podcast. I'm Gail from Enrichment Coaching, and I'm a personal development and confidence coach. My vision is to live in a world where people feel confident to be their best authentic version of themselves every day. I really want to empower people to take action through exploring what I like to call their confidence DNA and how they can enrich it. So my style of coaching is really informal, it's conversational, and it will always be all about you. I'm not all about models and theory, although I do believe they have their time and place. I'm really actions focused, I'm direct, and there's no fluffy stuff involved. And I'm a big believer in pulling up your big pants and going and getting stuff done. Now, I love to make a difference to those beliefs that you have about what you think you can and cannot do. So if you've been thinking about how one-to-one coaching might work for you and you want to find out more, then get in touch through my website, which is enrichmentcoaching.co.uk, and you can find my links at the bottom of each show notes. So enough about me. I'm really excited to be back with Series 2 of the Confidence Conversations podcast with some incredible guests who are ready to talk honestly about them and their confidence. Now, for this series, rather than kind of general confidence conversations, we're going to be digging a bit deeper to understand more about the things that have an impact and the things that enrich your confidence. And remember, there's little to no editing, meaning the conversation you hear is really authentically confident. If you listen regularly, I'd love you to subscribe. And more than that, I'd love to hear what you think. So feel free to get in touch. So go on and listen to the latest episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast. Today I'm really delighted to welcome somebody who describes herself as writing killer copy. This is exciting. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Kate Coote. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Gail. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to be a guest.
I'm really excited to talk to you about kind of having confidence in content, and we'll come on to that before. But first of all, for the listeners who maybe don't know who you are or what you do, let's introduce yourself.
Okay, well, I am a copywriter and a digital marketer. So that basically means I do websites and words. While I might build websites for my clients, some clients come to me and they've already got a website. I basically help other businesses to get found online by looking at their content that's on their website, making sure that it ranks for the search engines organically. And then I work with clients on an ongoing basis by kind of building a content strategy, a blogging strategy, and writing articles that will help them for various key phrases that their clients might be looking for. But I also, sometimes it's just people that come to me because they want their about page rewritten, because they don't feel very confident in it. And I might just do odd little things like that. But yeah, copywriting and digital marketing is what I do.
I just want to say when you said their about page, I mean, that is the most difficult thing in the whole wide world to write.
It is, but it is also the most visited page on your website. Yeah. I mean, you think if you look at a website, sometimes you land on another page, don't you? Because you've just visited it from a Google link, but you'll always click through to the about page and think, who is this business? Where are they based? What do they do? How are they qualified? How can they help me?
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it?
Everybody looks at that page, everybody. And it's a really difficult page to write yourself, because we're just not, I work with clients around the world, but generally we're all very British about it, aren't we? We don't really like saying how good we are at what we do, how we can, why we do what we do. So
It's so true. And when somebody says to you, so you know if you're going to do, and I've said it to you, can you send me a quick bio for the for the
Which I haven't
podcast
done
notes?
yet.
No, that's fine. But it's, and so when somebody asks you for that, you feel like this dread rising of like, oh my God, I've got to write another bio. I've got to write about myself again. It's a really interesting one, isn't it? And that the whole Britishness thing. Or actually is some of that like a confidence thing, like we don't like tooting our own horn, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why, getting someone else to do it for you is always such a good idea, because I'm your greatest champion. I will pick out what you do well and I will shout to the rooftops about it.
So before we go too deep into the stuff about bios, because I feel like I could just spend a whole podcast talking about that, tell us what confidence means to you.
So I think, to me, confidence is all about authenticity. So knowing who you are, knowing what you stand for. I think it was Oscar Wilde, wasn't it, who said, "Be yourself because everyone else is taken."
Yeah.
But I think part of that authenticity, and something that's quite often not recognised, is that also knowing that you won't be the right fit for everyone, and understanding that about yourself and saying, okay, I don't think that this will work with this person, whether it's a work or a personal relationship. I think being authentic and saying, I think not trying to be all things to all people is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I saw a social post actually a while ago, and it said something like, stop trying to be liked by everybody because you don't like everybody.
Yeah, it's
And
so
like,
true.
so true, isn't it? Yeah.
It's so true. And actually, we're not going to get on with everybody.
No.
And if we just recognize that and be true to ourselves and know that, you're in a much better place.
Yeah.
And I was conscious about not saying that to you because I didn't want to come across as negative. But I think that actually it has to be that, part of being authentic is being yourself, not trying to get along with everybody, but and knowing, that you have a lot to give some people.
Totally. And for me, part of this authentic confidence is about the ability, and I suppose it's linked with the courage to be able to say yes, but also the courage to be able to say no.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. And that's also really hard when you're starting out in business, right? And I don't know, maybe you've got a beautiful website, you've been out networking, you've got a client. And we were just talking before we pressed record about, sometimes, if you work really, really hard for a client, you're always going to work really, really hard for the client.
Yeah.
And actually, sometimes it takes the courage and the confidence to say, actually, do you know what? I don't think we're the right fit. And that's harder, probably, or feels harder than just going ahead and doing that piece of work.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's only something you learn in business and helps you to become more confident in business, is when you can learn to say no. Because I used to say yes to things, that I actually, as I said to you, words and websites are my things. I can write words or kill a copy. I can design websites and build websites. But people would come to me and say, oh, can you just do this logo? I'm not a graphic designer, but, I might have a crack at it, but I hated it. And it took so much time because it's not what I do, that actually now I've learned, and I don't necessarily say no, but I've built myself a network around me who actually enhance my confidence, because I know the person to go to for that logo. I know the person that runs Google ad campaigns, and I think that surrounding yourself with other people that are sort of within your industry, but do the things that you don't do, is really important.
Oh my God, totally. And some of the research, and I've said this probably on previous podcasts, but some of the research, and there's not a lot about confidence, but some of it, if you think about it as like an iceberg, this environment is something that sits quite deep below the surface in terms of your confidence. And it's about this environment, and it's not your physical environment, it's who you surround yourself with. And I think it's so true that, if you're not that person that can or can't do that, who do you know that can? Because that gives you confidence. Oh, well, I know this person, and that's where networking comes in.
Absolutely.
I also think there's this really interesting piece about the association that people make with something that you do. The thing I've had most often just lately is when I say I'm a confidence coach, people go, "Oh, you mean public speaking coach?" And no, and I don't think I've ever worked with anybody. I mean, yeah, of course, that would be part of it. But the kind of confidence I'm talking about is the within, the
Yes.
confidence that you've just described about knowing who you are, knowing what you can do and knowing what you're capable of, not the person that you're projecting outwards. This is about, without getting too deep and it sounding a bit airy fairy, this is about work on yourself. It's about self-development.
Yes.
But isn't it interesting, the association that people make? The assumptions, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. You know, networking is so important for building confidence because, you know, you kind of think about that little pitch that sometimes you do, sometimes you don't at the beginning. And actually, you know, some people hate that, but if you make yourself do it, you automatically start to gain more confidence if you get out there and put yourself out just a little bit, you know, and it's only, you know, sometimes 30 people and you've only got to talk for 30 seconds or whatever, or a minute. And it's just those first baby steps. But the networking, which I really value, and, you know, which is sort of the events that you and I go to together, is all those things where you meet other people who, you know, will be able to help you in your business. You know, you can send clients there where you know they're good at what you do. And at the end of the day, you know, your clients will look for that because it's having the confidence that you're sending the clients to the right place, because it comes back on you. If they don't do their job very well, you've given a duff recommendation. So it's really important to have that network and kind of keep building on it. So you know, you've always got alternatives that you can go to.
Yeah, definitely. And the 60-second pictures or whatever we do are really interesting, aren't they? Because there's such a range of it. And also I can never get away from in my old training days, you know, where you do introductions, icebreakers, you go around the room. We used to call it creeping death. And, you know, nobody listens to, or you don't listen to the ones that go before you because you're thinking, oh my God, I've got to do my pitch now. I'm really nervous. And you know, you may be a bit sweaty or whatever. And then when you've done yours, you don't listen to the ones after you because you're like, oh, thank God that's over. I've done it now.
Exactly that. But I mean, it's really difficult. And actually, this is what I was going to talk about we were talking about the about page and the bios. If you can knuckle down that about page, I mean, you can take snippets of that for everything. So when people say to you, you know, if you're in a guest publication or on a guest podcast, or if you are introducing yourself at a networking, you just have to take little bits. So if you've got that knuckled down, it sort of serves as the overarching stem for everything, if you like. And of course, it's going to change and you're going to need to adapt it. And that's the other thing that people don't do. And their whole website, but especially their about page, they write it, or sometimes they get me to write it, but they don't very often go back and revisit it. And it changes, you know. Your business changes from month to month, from year to year, as your market might change. You might decide to specialize in certain areas. Well, perhaps what you've written doesn't always then, you know, help you find those people. So I can to revisit those things.
Yeah, and I can really relate to that because I'm probably at that point now where I found in the pictures I'm going to say struggling. That's a bit of a strong word for how I'm feeling, but I'm finding it harder to really articulate what I do, because coaching is such a wide thing, as is confidence, right? It's such a, like I just said, people go, oh, public speaking. And I'm like, no, it's not that. But it's really hard because each different client comes to me with something different. So it's quite a challenge to kind of pin that down in some ways.
Actually, I think you've done it really well when we've been at networking. When you sort of give an example, when you say, oh, people ask me what I do, and, you know, this is an example of what the feedback that someone gave me. And I think that's a better pitch. And actually, you're not really talking about yourself. You're talking about what someone else has said about you. So it's much easier in a way to do that, because authentic and genuine. This is a true story. This is what somebody said about me. So I think that that's really good, that the way you do it. I've seen you do that a couple of times.
I think that's really great feedback, actually, because it's fun. It's like we were just saying about the pictures, isn't it? And I do try and challenge myself. Maybe comes back to the big pants bit, right? Being courageous. I do try to challenge myself not to say the same thing every time, because you and I go to quite a bit of networking where there are a lot of the same people. And often, I sometimes think, if it's the same pitch, I could probably say that person's pitch because I've heard it however many times in that month or whatever. So I do try and challenge myself to mix that up a little bit, to kind of still have a bit of a core message, but then a bit of and this is kind of what I can do, rather than it being about me.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've done before, and I think it's difficult when time's limited, but if you get a bit more time for your pitch, is actually just give people some tips, like 3 tips to help you improve your about page, or so I have done that before. I haven't done it recently. I should do more of that, actually, because people remember you, because you're not stood up there just doing the same old.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think I was better at pitching when we did some online networking, because I kind of would write out some bullet points, but when you're stood in a room, but because what I would do is I would ask everybody a question, because that would be quite a coachy thing.
Yeah.
And that it would land with some people in the room and with some it wouldn't, but maybe the landing with some people in the room is the people that you want to work with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's different. It's what other people don't do, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I struggle sometimes in situations where people say, you can ask open questions, because I can see people want to go in and solutionize because they want to give their advice, and that's fine. But I can't always do that. I find that really hard.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, so how do you then manage your own confidence levels?
Well, I think, as I said, I focus on what I do well, rather than trying to be everything to everyone. And if I can't do something, I'll either refer them to someone that can, or sometimes I'll say, well, I don't do that, but I have somebody that does do that, and I manage the whole process. Or sometimes I just say, no, I'm not your person. So I think it's about doing things you enjoy doing as well, because you're more confident in doing what you enjoy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's always a struggle, isn't it?
Yeah, and I love this piece about I focus on what I do well, because I think we're brought up throughout our childhood, uni days, all of that about, and also in our corporate lives, maybe, to what are your strengths and weaknesses. I mean, that's a classic interview question, isn't it? And I'm a firm believer, like you, in focus on your strengths, right? Because they're the things you're good at, and the things you're not so good at, there'll be someone else in your team or surrounding you that can do that.
Yeah.
So why not play to your strengths and do that really well? The problem is, I guess, that we're hardwired for negative thinking. So we're always going to go to the negatives first. So how often do you hear people going, oh, I'm not very good at a 60-second pitch? I don't think I've ever heard anyone go, oh, I'm great at a 60-second pitch. That's
give me more.
Absolutely my strength. Yeah, let me do it all the time. But there are things that, like you've said, words and website, you're good at that, and you're good at that, and you're going to play to that. And the other stuff, actually, no. And I would probably say, you come to me for public speaking. Yes, I could probably help you, but am I the best person to do that? No. I'm sure there are people out there that focus purely on that. But if you want some deep stuff about confidence, so you want to dig deep and find who you are and what it means to you, then I'm your girl, definitely.
And also, people respect you for that. If you say, actually, I can find you someone who can help you with that, but it's not me, people respect that so much more than you having a crack at it and actually doing not a great job at it. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, and I think, again, for me, this links into this courageous piece of saying no and saying yes.
Yes.
The two they just go hand in hand, and I would definitely feel more confident in saying, actually, this isn't my area of strength. I know someone who's amazing at this.
Yeah.
I'd be much more than trying to wing it.
Yes.
Which I don't believe in either.
No, and that's sort of another point on winging it to a degree is actually, I think the other thing that helps manage confidence levels is being prepared, but also not putting myself under pressure. A lot of my stuff is built around deadlines. But actually, I always have lovely, nice, long deadlines. When people say to me, so I had someone approach me recently, they wanted an award entry written, and the award was like a week's time. Well, award entries take, they could take weeks to put together if you want to win. And I thought, actually, I'm not going to put myself under that pressure. So I said no, because it's actually I wouldn't have felt confident that I could deliver a good product if I was putting so it's like the mechanics of knowing that you've got the time and the resources, things like that give you confidence.
Yeah, I really like what you just said about, I like to be prepared. So almost preparation, but not pressure. I like that, because you're right. And lots of people, when we talk about what confidence means to them, lots of people refer to kind of this being prepared, having the knowledge about what I'm doing, that because knowledge sometimes power, sometimes isn't, depending on the situation. But I like this idea of I'm prepared, but there's not too much pressure either on me or on kind of what I'm doing. I like that, because that's kind of a slow build, isn't it, of confidence and of knowledge, and getting it right and spending that time to do that.
So I learned very early on in my adult life and a previous career how important it was to be prepared. So I don't know if you know, but many years ago in a previous life, I was actually cabin crew for BA.
Oh, how exciting.
And actually, I was also what they call an SEP instructor, safety and emergency procedures. So I would spend a month flying, and then I would do a month in the training school, and I would train other crew, cabin crew and pilots, on different aircraft. And I was registered to train the 747, lovely 747, and the 777. Now, we used to train our BA staff, but sometimes we'd have like guest people come in to train. Other airlines would use the training facilities. And one day my boss in that training school said to me, Kate, you train the 747, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he said, good. He said, Qatar Airlines are coming in today. Their 747s are a little bit different to us. I think it was Qatar. It was one of the Middle Eastern ones. So their 747s are a little bit different to ours. He said, but here's the manual. Have a quick look. You're up at 9. And I looked at my watch, and this was sort of 8:30. Well, it wasn't a little bit different. It was like, it could have been a completely different aircraft. And I was stood in that mock-up saying, oh, and then, you have your fire extinguisher here, and this is that. And the crew that were taking the course were correcting me and saying, no, ours isn't there. Ours is here. And I'm thinking, this is just dreadful, dreadful. And I literally wanted to curl up and die. And at the end of it, I went back to my boss and said, I'm never doing that again. Please don't ever ask me at such short notice to do a course like that. Wow. But it taught me a lesson on being prepared, and you just feel awful if you're not prepared, don't you?
Yeah, God, that's a great story. I did not know. Right, at another date, I'm clearly going to be questioning you about your BA cabin crew. I always wanted to do that when I was younger. I always wanted to be cabin crew.
It was a great life.
Yeah, I bet. But yeah, as you were talking about that, I was like, God, I bet there's loads of lessons in there, isn't there, about what you learn and where you think you've got the knowledge, or you think you don't, but you're put under back to that pressure piece to deliver. And actually, I can only imagine what that did for your confidence, in terms of not just your overall confidence, but kind of how credible you felt in front of these other people, where you've probably been bigged up as this amazing trainer in this, and suddenly you're in front of them, and you, like you just said, I wanted to curl up and die, because actually it was all wrong.
It's serious. It's like safety.
Yeah.
And it just was awful, dreadful. Anyway,
how did you recover from that?
Well, I think it was probably when I started to learn to say no, because I think if anyone had asked me again, I would have said, no, I'm not doing it. No. But, in those days, I was perhaps more of a people pleaser, as we all are perhaps when we're a bit younger, and it's only kind of age that gives us a bit more wisdom, really. I mean, this was many, many years ago.
Yeah, but I also think some of the people pleasing as well, not all of it, but some of it does come from the title that you're given when you're in an employed role, because there's a certain expectation that comes with that title, whatever that title is. And I think we all go through those moments of, if I say no to this, what is that going to mean for my career? Is it going to be career limiting? Am I going to upset somebody? Am I going to offend somebody? But also, I think that what you have just said is, that was the point where I started to learn to say no. And this, for me, is another massive piece of confidence, is about these experiences. All these things we experience, we don't realise sometimes how they really change who we are, our confidence, and everything that makes that up.
They totally shape us.
Yeah.
They totally shape us. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. And actually, when you I'm going to go back to the about page, sorry.
No.
When you think about the about page, one of the first things before you even start to write it that you need to think about is have a moment of self-reflection of all the experiences that have shaped you and how you've got to where you are and the different careers that you've had, even if it's not part of your business now or part of what you're doing now. It's all of that, what shaped me? How did I get to where I am today? Because actually, all we're doing is telling a story. I mean, if you can tell stories, people relate to you. And obviously, when you're writing words on a website, people are going to get bored if you give them your life story. So pick out the little bits that are kind of prevalent.
Well, that's a great top tip, isn't it, about self-reflection? Because I did a bit of that. I had to rewrite my bio for something. I can't remember what it was for, but I rewrote it for something. And it wasn't until I started writing that I realised that actually my 20 years in a retail environment had really shaped who I am as a coach. Because I think this is where the taking action comes from. Because when you're a retail manager, you have to take action to get stuff done. Things move quickly. It moves at pace, from floor moves to window changes to staffing to sales, all of that and you wear many different hats. And I think a lot of those experiences where I made loads of mistakes as a manager, and I look at some of that now and think, God, how did I even, what must it have been like to work for me? Nobody write in if you worked for me, unless it's good feedback. Nobody answers on a postcard. Well, I had a few retail jobs. I did, when I first out of uni, I was an assistant manager at what was Gymboree, which was an American retail. That was great. I loved that. Unfortunately, they went into administration. And then I went and did some like designer kind of stuff in outlet centres. Right. And I do remember being left, here we go, here's something that this is like turning into me, about stuff about me. It's meant to be about you.
No, I like it.
But I remember being left in what was the old Whiteley Village. We were one of the first shops to open. I remember the area manager just leaving me with a set of keys and going, right, girl, I'll see you in a week. And I was like, oh my God, I've got this shop. I've no idea what I'm doing, but I did it, because I'd learned some stuff and I knew some stuff. And then after that, they also went into administration. Then after that, I went to Monsoon Accessorize. And I was there in Chichester, and I managed the Chichester branch for about 5 years, when it was originally next to near the Cross, near the Market Cross. Yes, and then it moved into where Oliver Bonas is now.
Yes, I remember it being there.
And I was there for about 5 years, and I fell out of love really with frontline retail. It was too much. And that then I started to learn to be a trainer. Yeah. And then I found the role at Ann Summers, and I went to Ann Summers as a training officer at head office. But I was relatable, right? Because to the store managers, to the retail managers in Ann Summers, because I'd been a store manager, I'd been there. I knew what challenges they were up against. And so that was my retail background.
And actually, that's a really interesting point. You knew what challenges they were up against. And shouldn't we all think about our clients and customers that way as well? And that in itself will give us confidence. I've been there. I know what you're up against. I know what you're wanting to solve. I know what problem you have. And that gives you confidence if you kind of relate to your clients and customers that way.
Yeah, and I approach that with a little bit of caution, right? Because I think in coaching particularly,
Oh, yeah.
And my role is not to give you the answers. My role is to help you make sense of stuff you can't make sense of. So I don't actually need to know what you do.
Right.
But in some cases, it's my experience does come into play, because it's useful to say, look, I can empathize with you, not sympathize, not, I can empathize with where you're at. If it's useful, let me share an experience, because there might be something in what I've done that I go, you might go, oh God, yeah, actually that wouldn't quite work for me, but I might do it this way.
Yes.
But you are right. And I think, to your point, right, we're going to be on here forever because this is really interesting. To your point earlier about, how we solve things for our customers, that is my problem, is because I don't.
You can't solve.
You solve that problem, but this is kind of where I can help you.
Yes, it's guiding them to solve their own problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but you
But
do make a really good point about that.
Yes, but you also, you have to be confident that you can guide them to solve their problems.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because a few people have often asked me, well, how do you know you're doing a good job? And your point about self-reflection was just hit a nerve with me, actually, because when I'm thinking about where I'm at, I was in a bit of a down bit the other day. Sometimes you have these bits, don't you, where you go, God, what is going on here? And I started to look at the reviews that people had left me. And suddenly I was like, oh, actually, there's some stuff in here that I can probably use in a bio, in the about me, in social.
Oh my God, are you reading my notes that I made on those questions you sent me through? But yes, absolutely. And it comes back again to that, how I said your pictures at networking meetings are really good because they're really authentic. It's what people have actually said about you. And the same with you can't make a review up. If it's a Google review, it's a Google review.
Yeah.
And so, it's really authentic. I mean, I know that there are those occasionally you see websites that say, brilliant product, Mr. S of, avoid them, But you know what I mean? Generally, with authentic people, reviews are, are a great way to build your confidence.
So tell me a little bit about how I'm really interested in your killer copy. And I want to know actually how you got the confidence to say, I write killer copy. I'm banging the table now for anyone that can hear that.
Okay, well, the killer copy, obviously being a copywriter, I love a little bit of alliteration. So killer copy, it has to go together. And I think, generally, and I think we might have already said this, in life, I think we're good at things we enjoy, generally. And I have always loved writing and words. And, I was always good at English literature and things like that. I've always loved reading. But, like everyone, I've had a variety of careers and different things. But so I'm going to tell a little story to how I got to where I am. So I actually, in 2004, moved to New Zealand, and I lived there for 12 years. And when we moved over there, I started a business. So I had seen over here kind of the explosion of online retail. I'm talking 2004. Things had only just started going online. And I think, but people in the UK were getting used to it. When I moved to New Zealand at that time, there was nothing online, and the geography of New Zealand is perfect for online sales because you've got all these little towns, coastal towns, or, towns where, rich farmers and their wives live, and there's nothing in between for miles and miles and miles. And if you actually want to go on a shopping trip, you've got to fly to Auckland or Wellington or Sydney. So, there are lots of really rural areas and lots of people with nothing to do with their money. They've got nothing to spend it on. So I thought, this geography is great for online sales, and it's not really been done. So I decided I was going to start an online website that sold like handbags and, nice fashion accessories and things like that. And I did. Now, in those days, websites were very, very smoke and mirrors. So I actually, at time didn't know how to build a website. Things like WordPress, and they didn't exist back then. You went to a coder and they built you an HTML website, and so I went to this website designer and I blew my budget on a website. If I told you what I spent on my first website, you'd be horrified. But it took all my budget. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to have to do everything else myself because I've got no marketing budget. So I learned how to write a media release. I got into Twitter, as it's now called X.
Twitter.
Before, it was like when it first started. In fact, the first time I was a guest on a podcast was in the early 2000s, and it was British women who did a podcast called The Podcast Sisters, and they talked about technology and marketing through technology.
Wow.
And I was a guest on theirs. And so I kind of got into all the social stuff, and I learned to use email marketing platforms and how to write newsletters, and, studied what got good click through and things like that. So I was entirely self-taught because I had no budget. Anyway, I built a great audience and I had such a fun time doing it. So the business itself was actually quite successful because I built this, huge audience, but actually it wasn't turning a profit because I was importing all my goods and, it was just an administrative nightmare. And I suddenly realized I had this light bulb moment when I thought, actually, I like all the other stuff more than I like actually being the online store. I like all the writing and the marketing and the social media and the newsletters and writing the blogs. I was blogging even then, I was writing content, and I love all of this, but actually, why don't I try doing it for other people? And so I had a friend who owned a boutique locally to me, and I started doing it for her, and she recommended me to other people. And then slowly the business grew, and I thought, gee, I'm really good at this. I'm sorry, but I think I'm good at it.
Don't apologize.
And I thought, I don't want to do the other stuff. So I sold off all the stock and I just went full time into, kind of digital marketing, copywriting for other people. And then people started to ask me to write awards entries. And I thought, at the time, I think I can do this. And actually, the first couple I wrote, people won. And so I've slowly, I took on more. So the copywriting, sort of grew as well.
Yeah.
So that's how it all started. And as we've said, I think when people give you feedback and when people say, oh, you're good at that, or they give you testimonials, that's when you have the confidence to say, yeah, I can write killer copy.
Yeah, amazing. What a great story. And the thing for me as well is the whole self-taught thing. I've been working with a client who I'm not going to go into loads of detail, but she has mainly been self-taught in her area, and she's absolutely flying. But I think you have to have a certain amount of self-belief and confidence to be able to do that. Along with, clearly she's had a great coach as well, but she's gone off and she's taken the action to make that stuff happen, and that's what it's all about, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
What a great story. I love that.
Absolutely. And it's just experience. Well, I'm working with someone else at the moment, another client, and I said, let's talk about your customers. How are you qualified to teach them how to do this? And he said to me, well, if you're looking for a degree in X, I won't say what it is because then I haven't got it. What I've got is real life experience, and that counts for so much.
Yeah, and going back to my retail experience, right, I've actually got a degree. I've got a BSc Hons in retail management. That degree did not teach me how to run a store or how to deal with people. I learned that in my year's placement, I learned it all the time. I was in retail. You're always learning where retail and people are concerned. But I didn't learn that sat in the classroom. It's the experiences that have shaped me and that I've learned from, the mistakes that I've made where I've gone, oh God, Gail, that was you could probably have dealt with that a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That, is only experience. I mean, you keep saying about mistakes you made, but similarly, when you've done something well, that also you think, oh, I've done that well, I'm going to do that again.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's true.
That
Actually,
worked. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah, I guess the risk with that as well is, at what point do you do it and do it and do it that it becomes you're back in your comfort zone?
Well, that's true too. Yes.
That would be, and I think that's always at the back of my mind, is like, oh, I like that, so I'll go and do that again. And then you go, oh, actually no, I now need to do something different, because if you do what you've always done right, you'll get what you've always got, I guess.
Yes.
But there is a lot to take from, well, that element went really well, that didn't, so if I just tweak this and tweak that, and that again is where your self-reflection piece comes in for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So tell me then how you help your clients to find their own unique voice, because that's a challenge, right? So in my case particularly, there are loads of coaches out there.
Yeah.
So how do you work with a client to be unique?
Okay, so again, comes back to, so I really enjoy, when I first start working with clients, I really enjoy talking to them like this. And that's actually a big part of what I do. So I'm working with a client at the moment, building a website, writing all the copy. And we have a meeting every week and we talk about one element, and it might be, okay, today let's go through the about you. Today, let's talk about the services today. But actually, it kind of drawing that out from people. And some people don't have the time for that. So I actually also have a kind of, this sounds awful to say it like this, but a brand questionnaire that I sell out to people. But what it does is make people self-reflect. And I think you kind of, when you first, even from that initial phone call with a client, you work out in your head whether they're going to be whether they're time poor and going to be more susceptible to the brand questionnaire that they can write down in their own, time, or are they going to be the sort of person that actually wants to talk to you and they're not, not really interested in. So you sort of work that out. So, I kind of start with that, and that's just kind of drawing information out from in an interview type style, which I really love. And then so it's that self-reflection, and then I kind of out of that comes, well, who are they wanting to talk to? Who's their audience? It's really important to get them to tell their story, and that's the bit I love most of all. How did they get from here to here?
Yeah.
Because that's often the sort of founding principle of your about page. Of course, and this is the thing I say to everyone, what you need to remember is that the about page is never really about you. It's always about what you can do for your clients.
Yeah.
And so often I see about pages, I'm going off topic a bit here, but so often I see about pages that are like an online CV. And I just, think, oh no, it's like, and you just think, oh my God, this is awful. There's no story.
Everybody's now pulling up their own website to look at their about, as they're listening, to look at their about me page.
But, at the end of the day, we do business with people we like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And if through the words on your website or at networking meetings, you can, you have a connection with, and you can make a connection through words. You don't necessarily have to be online in your videos, your reels or anything like that. You can make a connection through words, as long as you're authentic. I think the other thing is to kind of, people ask for tips on how they should write. And I think one of the really important things to help you gain confidence and know that you're writing well is to write like you speak, to be conversational in it.
Yes.
It's, when I write for myself, I use a lot of exclamation marks. My husband says to me, oh, why are you using all those exclamations? But actually, you're talking to me now and people can't see this because we're talking to each other on camera. I use my hands all the time and they're like my exclamation marks. So I think if you can write conversationally, use the words you use. I make words up, that are my words.
Me too. Not always intentionally, but sometimes. That's a really good point though as well, because I think that I have started to do a lot of dictation into my phone, if you like. Although the other day I did something, and it's going to be a social post because actually I've no idea what it said. Beyonce was in there and all sorts. I've no idea what it meant. But what I have noticed from that is that actually it is more conversation. It's more how I would speak. And I think once you start to type, that changes, because it becomes proper English. Not that that's proper, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It becomes more written rather than kind of the spoken word.
Yes. And I think, okay, so there's another point about having confidence on the page. And of course, being a writer, I will always say, make sure your grammar's, up to date, and, use a tool that helps you with that. But actually, that still doesn't mean you can't write like you speak. So as I said, I make words up. One of my favorite words is listicle. And that's a post. So when I write a blog post and I do 10 tips to help you, that's a listicle post in my head. I've made that word up. I don't think it's a word, but I use it all the time. And I use it when I'm writing too. So, and I'll admit that I've made the word up. But I think, that's a word I'd say, so I'm going to write it.
Yeah, totally. It's okay. I feel like we could literally talk forever about this, and maybe you might have to come back on again and we'll talk some more. But for now, if somebody wants to get started or rewrite, they've just opened their about page because we've been talking about it, and now they want to start rewriting their copy, what are your top tips for, I guess, being your authentic, confident self in your content and your copy?
So I think that, first of all, understand who you are. So it's that period of self-reflection. Who are you? What have you done that's great in life? What have you done that doesn't work? So have that period of self-reflection. Remember that your about page is never about you. It's about the people that are reading it. So actually, when I write an about page, I might often start with, a group of questions about the person that might be reading it. And then I'll write the about the person in the middle, and I'll give a little kind of bit about their journey, how they got to where they are, what qualifies them. And when I say what qualifies them, it's not a list of qualifications, it's like drawing out. They might have been in the same situation. It's whatever it is that qualifies them. It's however they understand this person's needs and problems. And then again, when I close it, I'll always close it with a call to action about the person that's reading. So always make sure you sort of open and close with that person that's going to be reading rather than yourself. Be authentic. Tell a story. I think I think mine tells my story of moving to New Zealand, and how, so tell the story that got you to where you are today. Write like you speak conversationally. It doesn't matter if it's, it doesn't matter if you're not using, long words, or in fact, here's a tip. When you're writing web copy, I'm not going to start talking too much about search engine optimization because we will be here for 3 weeks. It's such a huge topic. But one of the things that you're ranked on is not just sort of key phrases that you use, but also your copy's readability.
Yes.
So actually, Google and the other search engines don't like it if you use too many really long words. In fact, you will note that your readability score, if you use a tool like Yoast or something,
I see that on mine,
is not that score is not that good. So actually using smaller sentences and smaller words is better for your readability. So think about being conversational. Find a way to engage with your audience. I mean, that sounds a bit cliche, doesn't it? We all want to do that, but I think again it's just telling a story. I think also when you're thinking about being online, of course, it's not just the words, it's about all your social channels. And obviously those have the words, but it's about the imagery you use as well, and making sure that it all tells the same story. Because people will find out. They'll find out if you're not authentic, because if you've written an about page and it's full of really long words and blah blah, and then you do your Insta live and actually it's just you being you, they'll think, oh, these two don't marry up. So it's kind of making sure that everything marries up, if you like, and the images that you use are consistent. Oh, there's another thing about an about page. How many do you see where people don't even have an image of themselves?
Oh, I mean, if you go to mine, there's an image of me from when I was about 12 with really, really curly hair. I mean, it's enough to scare anybody, to be fair. It's definitely about me.
But so many people don't have, and actually that already, if you go to a web page and an about page and there's no image and it's like a single person, or even if you go to the company's page and there's not pictures of the good bio shots, you automatically think, oh, what's going on here? Who are these nameless, faceless people?
Yeah, it's like the eggheads you used to get on Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, isn't it? Yeah, when people don't have that profile picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, being yourself, being authentic is the most important thing. And for a lot of people, I think that if they don't feel confident, there are ways that you can start to feel confident. So it might be that you post initially on other people's content, so you engage with other people, and comment on their posts. I think also it's good to join groups on social, like LinkedIn, and because you can be a little bit of a voyeur to start with and see how other people are doing it. And then that sort of helps you find your feet a little bit. Collaborate with other people, quite often a guest on a podcast, a guest on a blog post, things like that, where you don't have total responsibility, but there's still enough of your personality in there.
I really like your piece about, make sure everything's consistent, because I think one of the things that I learned quite early on was, if you met me at networking, it's like, and you took away a card, right? It's likely that you're probably going to go and look me up. And I was a bit like, I would hate to think that someone would get home and go, well, actually her website or her LinkedIn or whatever isn't a reflection of what the person that I've just met.
Yes.
Right. You must write in and tell me if you think it's not, but I think it is quite a reflection of kind of what.
Absolutely.
And I think I got to the point with social where it became a bit of a library. You can go and find it. You've met me, you've had a bit of an introduction, but actually you now want to go and find out a little bit more about me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think yours is a really good reflection, actually. And yours is very conversational.
Right. I'm loving this feedback. You can be a guest again.
God, I'm such a sucker. No,
I haven't paid her, by the way, everybody.
No, I think that your articles and things that have got a lovely conversational level to them.
Yeah, and I think that's a reflection of the kind of coach I am as well. When I say I'm not the kind. I am my coaching is very informal. It's very conversational, but it'll always be challenging and it'll always be actionable. And I think again that's important, isn't it, to have that message across. Yeah. So to wrap up, then, tell if somebody wants to come and work with you for Killer Copy, where can they find you?
Well, you can visit my website, which is katecoote.com. And I also have a website which is dedicated purely to copywriting, which is copykate.co. Okay. Or you can find me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I'm at a girl called Kate on Instagram.
Great. And we'll pop all the addresses in the show notes.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Links.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been literally, we could talk forever. It's been really insightful. It's been a bit of self-reflection for me. Nice to have the bit of feedback. So thank you for that. But yeah, thank you so much for saying yes and being an amazing guest.
Well, thank you very much for asking me. It's been a pleasure. I feel like I've rambled a bit, but hopefully not too much.
Not at all, not at all. I think there's going to be loads of people now going to their websites and looking at their about. That's exactly what I'm going to do in a minute. Go and look, because I'm in the process of going, actually mine needs a bit of an update. So those top tips, I'm gonna do those. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Confidence Conversations podcast.